If there's a roller coaster flying over the entrance, we must be at America's Roller Coast, Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. This was the first park I ever did a walkthrough of a few years ago, but enough has changed at the park that I figured we'd do another walkthrough so you can see what's changed, especially one particular thing that I'm very excited about. We're standing right at the entrance here in front of this beautiful Daniel Mueller classic carousel that's at the entrance to the park. And what we're going to do this time is we're going to take a little walk in a clockwise direction. The last walkthrough I did, I started in that path in front of us and went counterclockwise, so I'm going to go in the opposite direction this time. In front of us on the right is the big gift shop, the Park Plaza. The roller coaster on the left is Raptor, one of the largest inverted coasters ever built. And you'll notice there's beautiful landscaping throughout this park, lots of color. The Jack Aldrich Theater was showing a 3D movie about movie musicals from the past. And you can see the Sky Ride. There are a couple of really good ways to get around in the park. The Sky Ride takes you to the end of this main Midway area. There's also a train, which we'll see later, which takes you to the far north end of the park. There's the entrance for the picnic pavilions, so if you have an outing, it might be there. Over on the left here is Midway Market, which is the largest eatery in the park. It's a buffet, all-you-can-eat buffet style, and good food there. Over on the right is the games area, and we'll see that a little more in detail when we come back. That big loop in front of us is the track of Valravn, a coaster that opened last year. There it goes. There's the entrance to Raptor, really popular ride. That cupola that you see in the distance is the lift hill for Blue Streak, my favorite ride in the park. And over there you can see the Ferris wheel and Wicked Twister and the spire of Windseeker. I got no end of ribbing last time I did this video because I called it Windjammer, but it's Windseeker. Also in the distance you can see the Power Tower, a quadruple drop tower, and that massive arch spire way in the distance is Top Thrill Dragster, which we'll be seeing a little more of later on. The thing I love about this park is it's about the rides, and they're in your face everywhere. You get to walk underneath them, around them. That's what makes it an amusement park instead of a theme park. It's all about the Midway. Now, we could keep going north along this path, and it would take you down this way, but I'm going to take you down a new path over on the left. This opened up last year. It used to be a dead end, but now it's a way to get to that other end of the Midway without going straight down the main Midway. In front of us now is the station for the Blue Streak, which is one of the oldest rides in the park at this point. It was built in 1964 by the great John Allen. There's the Chicky and Pete's. And it still provides a phenomenal ride. It's a simple out-and-backer. It's only 70 feet high, which seems small compared to all these massive rides around us. But it still packs in a lot of airtime. It's really fun. So we're going to keep moving around to the right. Now the area in front of us used to be home to one of the 3 antique car rides. It was a little hot rod ride. There's the Cadillac car. The antique cars are on our right, and the 2 rides used to intertwine. They removed the hot rod cars and then put in Valravn, which is a B&M drop coaster of ridiculous proportions. As you'll see, it's massive, like everything at this park. And this is the thing, there's so much going on, you don't know where to look. Notice I just tried to catch Raptor going by, and then I didn't want to miss Valravn going up. You have those difficult choices all the way throughout this park. You don't know where to look. There's so much going on. So let's take a look at Valraven going down its first drop here. That's the actual entrance to it. And Cedar Point, of course, offers as an upcharge the fast lane where you can cut the lines and irritate all the other people who did not pay the upcharge. And there are the Cadillac cars. That ride takes you right under the structure of Raptor. And there goes Valraven. There are so many tall structures in this park. That itself might cause you confusion as to where you are. The Power Shot Tower is 300 feet high. It's not the tallest structure in the park, but it's a good grounding point, along with those two water towers that you see. That gives you a sense that you're around the center of the park. Now, what we missed by not going down the main midway was the giant old Cedar Point building that acts as the arcade and also the park offices. There's also the Cedar Downs, which is one of only 2 racing derby rides left in the world, and the Cadillac car entrance, and some of the gift shops there. You can see Snoopy Boutique, you can see the Sweet Spot, and also Pagoda Gifts on the left, which has some of the most amazing gifts that you can get at any park. So there's the north station of the Sky Ride. So if you took that at the entrance, it would just bring you down to here. The spiral that you see in front of us is the corkscrew. And you can also see Coaster's Diner there, where you can get hamburgers and shakes. Now that other coaster going in the distance is Rougarou, which used to be Mantis when it was a stand-up coaster. They retrofitted the coaster with sit-down trains and renamed it Rougarou, but it's basically the same coaster. So you could go right here underneath the corkscrew, and that would take you on the east end of the park. We're going to go on the left, on the west end of the park, heading north. That massive lift hill you see in front of you is the groundbreaking Millennium Force, which was built in 2000 and is 300 feet high. Actually a little over 300 feet. And it goes 93 miles an hour. And that thing is about speed. There are a few hills on it, but really through most of it you're really low to the ground with over a mile of track, and it will knock your socks off. It's an amazing ride. And there's the back of Valraven. Throughout the park they have these billboards, and you can download a Cedar Point app and it becomes an augmented reality billboard where you see stuff happening on the billboard with your phone. Pretty neat. This is a big stage where they do a lot of musical performances throughout the day. They also have a big laser light show here at night. There's the bleachers where you can sit. The buildings that you see on the other side of the bleachers are actually the dormitories for the enormous number of workers they need in this park. On any given day at Cedar Point, you'll have 30 to 50,000 people in the park. This is actually a moderate crowd. Iron Dragon, another one of my favorite coasters and one of the last aero suspended coasters left. And the park decided for this season that they were going to make it a virtual reality ride where you have to wear goggles. Thankfully, they only do that for a few hours during the day. The rest of the time, it runs unadulterated. On the left is the South Station for the Cedar Point and Lake Erie Railroad, which is a beautiful coal-fired steam railway that runs to the back of the park, or I should say to the north of the park. There's the first big loop for Rougarou. And there goes Millennium Force in the distance. That's the third hill. And I mean, at that size, that's the third hill. That's bigger than most first drops on many coasters. If we were to continue straight, that would take us to the entrance of Rougarou. But instead, we're going to hang a left here. Cedar Point opened in 1870, which means it's the second oldest amusement park in the country. And it's gone through lots of changes, but really it took off in the 1980s when it embarked upon a mission to bring guests the biggest rides in existence. So other parks may have had similar rides, but none of them had them on the scale that Cedar Point did. This is the last turn of Millennium Force that you see there, and that was the entrance to Millennium Force. And what we're doing is we're walking. This is called informally the Millennium Midway, but we're heading toward what's called the Frontier Trail. It's populated by these old buildings that the park rescued from areas around Ohio, and they reconstructed them like old barns and old homes. And it's quite nice and shady. It's one of the places to come to in the park if you're getting really hot and you don't want to go to the water park, which we'll get to in a little while. Then the Frontier Trail is nice and cool and shady. Although the park is only 364 acres, it feels like a lot more because pretty much every inch of this park is packed with stuff. So it all gets used. You're walking pretty much over the entire area. The Red Garter Saloon, it's one of the many eateries in the park. They also were featuring a musical show on the stage there, Country Rocks. So here you can see we're getting into the nice shaded area of the Frontier Trail section. As I mentioned, Cedar Point is a park of extremes, and it currently holds the world's record for the most roller coasters in one park that are over 200 feet high. But as I mentioned in my King's Dominion video, after a while, the height doesn't become as impressive, because if everything is over 200 feet, you start to lose your sense of scale. It just becomes this overwhelming city of steel. The blue track you see in front of us is Millennium Force. The tall one is the outbound track, the smaller one is the inbound track. There's Albert, which was one of the steam engines that was retired from the park. There is a section of the park that's sort of on an island in the middle of the peninsula where Cedar Point sits. And it has had several rides there over the years. They had a boat ride that went around the water. There's a Dinosaurs Alive exhibit that's there. And there's also now a sky coaster, which used to be at another area of the park. It was relocated here. Now this was new for this year, was pony rides. And that's appropriate for this area because just a little ways up the Midway, as you'll see, is a petting zoo. And that's a nice place to take small children. In fact, Cedar Point has no less than 3 separate big Kiddieland areas in the park. So there's plenty for small kids to do, as well as teens who want to spin their brains out. You can see some of these buildings. They're gorgeous buildings that are, these vintage 1800s, 1700s buildings that make up this whole little village area. Most of these are concessions and vendors. Like the one on the right is a leather store. There are candy stores, things like that. You can see over on the right they have these stocks where you can put your head in for a photo op. That's the whistle of the railroad, which is right on the other side of this fence, so let's see if we can catch it. And I guess we missed it. Oh well. That stretch of track is heading southbound, and you catch that at the very north end of the park. And that's a really fun section for kids because it has a whole set of animatronic scenes of skeletons doing silly things. This used to be the entrance to Shoot the Rapids ride that didn't last long at the park, and now that's the entrance to Frontier Fling, the rebranded Sky Coaster. And this little contraption over here used to be part of the boat ride. It was one of the scenes that you went by in the boat ride, and they repurposed it over here. It's nice to see the park once again showing off some of its history. The big structure in front of us there is Snake River Falls. You could also see Skyhawk, the screaming swing, in the distance. There's the petting zoo. There's an old tractor on display. And this big building behind it is a grist mill, and they actually have a demonstration in there of how grist mills used to work, how it would grind the wheat into cereal. And there's the water wheel. And those massive jets of water are from Thunder Canyon, the park's massive river raft ride. And of course, you will get soaked on that ride. This red track in front of us is Maverick, which is an interesting coaster. It's not really tall, it's not really fast, but it is extreme. Lots of incredibly sharp changes of direction and steep drops. That's Snake River Falls, the park's big Shoot the Chutes ride. When it was built, it was one of the largest in the world, and it's still pretty big. And again, another way to get completely soaked at Cedar Point. There goes Maverick. We're now leaving the Frontier Trail, and we're crossing into Frontier Town, which is a sort of Western-themed area. Again, they don't go overboard on theming here, because this isn't a theme park, but it gives a slightly different flavor so you know approximately where you are in the park, so it doesn't all look the same. Again, lots of nice shade around here. Now at this point there are several directions we can take. We can go left, we can go right, and basically they all circle around to the same place. The big building on the right, the white building, is a museum that has a whole history of Cedar Point that's really interesting. You can see the antique car ride that's in front of us. That's the other one that they have. That's the lift hill to Maverick on the left. And in front of us is the Frontier Inn, which serves basically like fried chicken and frontier-y type stuff. So we're going to circle around this way here. Now this big station that you see in front of us used to house one of my favorite rides in the park, Whitewater Landing, which was a massive flume ride. That was removed to make way for Maverick, and they reused the station for the Maverick station. So a little piece of Whitewater Landing remained. Though I do miss that ride. It was a lot of fun. We're going to keep walking down here so you get to see what Frontier Town looks like. And there's also that particular thing I wanted to show you that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. As you can see, the antique car ride is pretty extensive down here, and it's really nicely landscaped with that big covered bridge. There's the queue line for Maverick. The queue lines at Cedar Point are huge. If you come here on a really busy weekend, be prepared to wait, anywhere from 2 to 5 hours for any of the major rides. Unless, of course, you want to pay the upcharge for the Fast Pass. But the queuing is done really well at Cedar Point. They move people as quick as they can, and almost all their rides have ridiculous amounts of capacity. They can put through usually a couple thousand people an hour on each ride. Now this is what I wanted to show you. You can see the entrance for the north station of the Cedar Point and Lake Erie Railroad right in front of us. You also have, food concessions, but what is this mess in front of us of wood? Well, that used to be Mean Streak, which was one of the largest and fastest wooden roller coasters in the world, and it was a pain in the butt. But look at that wild track that's being installed. Cedar Point this season is making no mention of the fact they're doing any work on this. They refuse to talk about it. But they've gotten RMC, the company that built the new Rattler for Six Flags and Wicked Cyclone for Six Flags and Twisted Colossus for Six Flags. And they're having RMC redo the Mean Streak as a steel coaster. And it looks like when that reopens in 2018, it's going to be the best ride in the park. The track just looks absolutely phenomenal. So here's another eatery. As you can see, it has burritos. And then a little nook and cranny down here has restrooms. And there's an entrance for an ice cream shop that I've never seen opened. And then some more. There's an arcade and more little shops, gift shops. As you can see, it doesn't exactly look like an old western town. Now, I've heard rumors that when the ride is finished, they're going to have the area inside the ride that used to be the queue line for Mean Streak. It'll become a whole new midway for Frontier Town. So the midway will extend into the middle of the ride. And that should be pretty spectacular, being surrounded by the ride on all sides. And there's Top Thrill Dragster in front of us. There's the general store. And now we come to another split in the midway here. If we go right, that takes us to Skyhawk and the entrance to the Cedar Creek Mine Ride, which is the second oldest coaster in the park. And that's a dead end over there. So we're going to go left. So now we're going to head down this way, and we're going to be on the east end of the park now, into what's known as the Gemini Midway. And why it's called the Gemini Midway will become apparent shortly. Directly in front of us is the park's catapult ride. It's called simply Slingshot. And there are some riders who just got shot. When Cedar Point was in its huge coaster building boom of the 70s and 80s, they had a really interesting architectural style to them, a very modernist, colorful look to them. And that orange station you see in front of us is Gemini, which at the time was one of the largest roller coasters ever built. It's a wood structure but steel track, much like what Mean Streak is going to become. And it's a racing coaster. It used to have one of the highest capacities of any ride in the park because it ran 6 trains. They're down to running only 4 trains, but that's still a lot of throughput. And it's a fun ride. A lot of airtime on it. And there goes Top Thrill Dragster again. And holy moly! You just witnessed a rollback. It didn't make it over the top of the hill. That's a rare occurrence. Probably a lot of thrill for the people in it. And in front of us now is one of my favorite haunts in the park, the Happy Friar, because it has cheese on a stick. the best delicacy you can ever have. And Cedar Point is now about the only park where you can get cheese on a stick. It's delicious. And I have it every time I'm there, as many times as I can. So there's the entrance to Camp Snoopy. That's one of the 3 big kiddie areas in the park. This giant Snoopy, that is the calling card of the place, is a bounce house. The yellow structure in the distance is the Lake Erie Eagles, which is a flying scooter ride. And over here on the right is Pipe Scream, which is a nice little spin and barf ride. You can also see Monster up there on the left. Again, notice how everything is nice and brightly colored. Yes, I would not do that after eating a cheese on a stick. And once again, notice that this whole section has the feeling of a state fair or a carnival. It's not, an attempt to do a themed amusement park. And that's, again, why I say this is really a big amusement park, not a theme park. Now, being this close to Top Thrill Dragster will give you an idea of just how massive it is. At over 400 feet tall, it's one of the tallest roller coasters in the world, and one of the fastest at a little over 120 miles an hour. It's a really intense 17 seconds. Yep, that's tall. Now over there, you can see the entrance to Dinosaurs Alive. And if you want to find it, all you got to do is look for that dinosaur. That's an upcharge, and it's a nice little walk through an area with all these big animatronic dinosaurs. Kids seem to really like that. This station up here in front of us on the left is Magnum XL 200. Which was the first roller coaster ever to break the 200-foot barrier. Doesn't seem like a lot now, but back then it was a huge deal when it was built, and it's still a pretty amazing ride. Really intense, sharp airtime on that ride. You'll be thrown violently into your lap bar. Another view of Top Thrill Dragster. So now we're heading southeast along the Midway. There actually is more to the park. There's more in the easterly end, but you can't really see it from here. You would actually have to go toward where the Magnum station is, and that would take you out to a whole other section of the park where they have the Breakers Hotel and the newly branded and huge Shores Water Park. That's on the shores of Lake Erie. And they've also expanded that whole beach area so that it really is a boardwalk and a beach now too. So if you stay at the Breakers, you have an entire lake with rolling waves at your doorstep. It's very nice. And that rush of sound means Dragster's going. And it barely crests and then drops straight down. And that's the whole ride. And it's back to the brakes. Like I said, an intense 17 seconds. Now notice this more room to play sign. It's letting you know that the park is adding on to the Breakers Hotel. They just did a huge renovation of that old structure, and it's gorgeous on the inside, and they're adding an entire another building to the complex. So there'll be plenty of places to stay right there. And usually Cedar Point will sell you a package that gets you into the hotel and into the park. And if you're a guest at one of their properties, you also get early entrance to the park, and you get exclusive ride time on different coasters each day. That blue station in front of us is the station for Corkscrew, which again, by today's standards, seems mild, but way back when, that was an amazing ride. It was the first 3-inversion roller coaster, and one of the largest. Whoa! And there goes Top Thrill Dragster. Whenever you hear that low sound, you know the thing's about to launch. And I don't know if you can see it, but you notice they have misters on the track to keep the track cool because it builds up so much heat. There's Corkscrew's entrance, and there it goes off the lift. This big building, concession building, is actually a grandstand where if you want, you can sit like at a race and you can watch the trains launch. And let's do that right now. Let's go over here and watch Dragster take off. It goes like a shot. Yeah, that's fast. You'll feel your skin pull back on your face on that one. And that's the actual station for Top Thrill Dragster. The entrance was just a little ways back. There's Power Tower. And that orange and red track that you see in front of us is Iron Dragon. There's Windseeker off in the distance. That's 300 feet high. This shop over on the left sells some really nice t-shirts and roller coaster paraphernalia. And the big loop you're looking at is Valraven. So as you can see, we're coming back to the main Midway now. But I'm going to take a different route going back that way. So you'll never see the main Midway in this video. You'll actually have to come to the park to see it. Or watch my first Cedar Point walkthrough where I do go down the main Midway. There's the wonderful track of the Corkscrew, which really set the design ethic for the park. You actually have to walk under the coaster as it goes over you. And so they've kept that feeling throughout the park. You're always surrounded by these massive rides. And here it comes. And there's another view of Iron Dragon with the misters. In the coaster enthusiast community, it doesn't have a good reputation, but I really enjoy the ride. It's not too severe. It's a great ride for, younger teens as a first big coaster for them. It's mild enough, but it's thrilling enough. And that feeling of just swinging back and forth in those trains is really wonderful, and it's unique. There's no other coaster that has that feeling. In front of us is a pretty stock scrambler there that actually looks really nice at night. And there's the north station of the Sky Ride. And you can see the big Cedar Point Pavilion there with the arcade in front of us, those big spires. That building is a sort of hub for the entire park. You have first aid there, you have security there. And it used to be at one time a big ballroom. And it hasn't been used for that in a long time, obviously. Although the Midway may seem a bit empty right now, there are probably about 20,000 people in the park. Many of them most likely at the water park because it's a beautiful day. But on a busy day, and we experienced that a few days after this video was shot, you're going to be shoulder to shoulder with people on this Midway. Here's an Auntie Annie's pretzel. And again, the main midway is straight ahead, but we're going to bear left over here to the extreme east end of the park. And there are a few other rides I want to show you out this way. There's also one new concession that I wanted to show you as well. Auntie Annie's is almost as good as cheese on a stick. Almost. Now there's the back entrance to the Pagoda gift shop. And if you go in there, it will lead you into the sweet shop, which will lead you into the Snoopy boutique, which has a lot of Peanuts themed merchandise. And you can see over here Planet Snoopy, which is another one of the kiddie areas in the park. And like Camp Snoopy, all the rides are themed to Peanuts characters. They also have Peanuts characters walking around the amusement park with photo ops for kids. Hey, there's Superman. Over here is Melt. That's one of the new concessions in the park. And basically, as you might expect, it's melted cheese stuff. So grilled cheese sandwiches especially. They have massive grilled cheese sandwiches. Let's take a little walk through Planet Snoopy here to give you an idea of what it's like. And this path brings us out onto the Lakeside Midway, which again is at the far east end of the park. The yellow track in front of us is Wicked Twister, which is 215 feet high. There's the Extreme Sports Stadium, where they have, as you might expect, extreme sports. Also off to the left is the entrance for Windseeker, and also if you wanted to get out and walk along the beach side, that's where you would do it. And there's the Giant Wheel, which offers wonderful views of the park. There goes Wicked Twister. And plenty of spin and barf rides around here. Now, the coaster going up the lift is the same one we saw at the beginning of the video going over the entrance of the park. That's Gatekeeper, which is a huge wing coaster. It's really intense. You saw the Dodgem cars over on our right, and that actually leads to another kiddie area called Kiddie Kingdom. Doesn't really have a theme, it's just a generic kiddie land. That's the Troika in front of us. And this big structure here is Max Air, which is a gargantuan spinning frisbee ride. Again, if the Point's going to get a ride, they're going to make sure it's the biggest one they can get. There's the Gatekeeper entrance over there. And you can see Lake Erie off in the distance. And now we're coming up on Game Row here. There goes Raptor in the distance.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, go!
And let's take a walk through Kiddie Kingdom over here on the right. I think they need a bigger sign for Max Air. Now this pavilion that you see in front of us is another big antique carousel. Remember I said there was a Mueller carousel, which is rare. This is their Denzel carousel. Again, vintage from the early 1900s. Gorgeous rides. They used to have 3 vintage carousels. One of them they put into Dorney Park in Allentown, Pennsylvania. So as you can see, pretty standard kiddie rides around here. The kiddie helicopters, kiddie auto cars. Let's listen to Raptor as it goes around. I love the roar it makes. Rougarou does the same thing. The sound is caused by the hollow box structure of the track. There are some parks that deaden it by filling it with sand, but I love that sound. There's a Johnny Rockets, if you like your hamburgers and shakes. And this is that game row that we saw at the beginning of the video. Again, really colorful. They have pretty good barkers here too that call you in. That wasn't one of them. And there you can see the south station for the Skyride and Midway Market over on the right. And in front of us, that little blue building is Toft's Ice Cream. That's the best ice cream in the park. Toft's is a well-known Ohio brand, and it's good stuff. They have a blueberry waffle cone ice cream. So it's not in a waffle cone, it's waffle cone mixed in with the ice cream. It's really good. And there's a Pink's, if you like hot dogs. You can also see a Starbucks coffee up here on the left. And, of course, because it's a modern park, there is free Wi-Fi throughout the entire park. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. Underneath the Skyride station is CP Shop, which has more gifts. And with that, it brings us to the end of our walkthrough. So as you can see, Cedar Point is a massive park. It's basically a county fair on steroids. It has some of the largest rides you'll ever find in the world. And when Mean Streak is finished next year, I believe that'll put the park's roller coaster count to 18 roller coasters in this one park. Of course, that includes the kiddie coasters that are in the Kiddieland sections. But that's pretty impressive. So there's enough to keep the whole family busy here. In fact, it's probably wise to have a multi-day visit, because there is no way, especially on a busy day, that you could do nearly everything in this park in a single day without burning yourself out. So as Gatekeeper flies through the air, we bid a fond farewell to Cedar Point. Definitely, this should be on every coaster enthusiast must-see parks, and it's just a great place to bring the whole family. And if Cedar Point isn't enough, there are plenty of other attractions nearby. So come on down to Sandusky, Ohio, to Cedar Point.